Great. Hi, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I wanted to put together a presentation about content planning for a lot of reasons, and I'll jump into that in a second. But first, let me introduce myself. If you don't know me, my name's Liz Kantner. I've worked in digital marketing since 2008, and my first role in the jewelry industry was managing Todd Reed's Instagram account or social media. I was his social media manager. And from there, I launched his Instagram account. I grew it to over 100,000 followers organically, and I really fell in love with the jewelry industry. So in 2016, I left my role at that company and I started working with Jay in New York, curating their new designer gallery. And from there, I've helped hundreds of designers find their way in the industry. And my specialty really, though, is social media and specifically content planning. I've been doing this for a really long time. When I first started in digital marketing, I was focused on writing blog posts and tweets and more copy heavy content. And it's really interesting for me how everything shifted. And I still love working in digital marketing because I think things have changed in huge ways and everything's very image and video heavy now. But it's still all really based on connecting with your clients. So the goals are the same, a lot of the strategy is the same, and the way you think about it's the same, but a lot of the platforms you use and techniques are a little bit different. So I wanted to do a presentation about content planning because I often do presentations about Instagram, and there's so much that I don't say in those presentations about what to actually post and how to think about posting, and what specific content strategy to take. And I think that a lot of people leave those chats kind of understanding how the algorithm works, kind of understanding some new techniques to use on Instagram to increase their engagement and connect with their clients and things like that. But still a little unsure of what to post. And I think that's just a big question. And I'd love to hear from everyone in the chat if you feel comfortable sharing, to let me know what kind of holds you back from planning ahead when it comes to content. We're going to be talking about content in a lot of different spaces. So not just Instagram. We're going to be talking about content for your brand in general. And I'd love to know what holds you back. A lot of times what I hear is I don't have time to do it, or again, I don't know what to post. But the real inspiration for this webinar came from the fact that I had a baby 2.5 months ago, and preparing for that, because I managed Instagram accounts, social media platforms, email marketing campaigns for several clients, figuring out how to take some sort of maternity leave because I had no idea what to expect. And when you work for yourself, you kind of need to get creative with how to take time off. So I went ahead and planned out 2 months of content in advance for each one of my clients. And it took a really long time and it was really challenging. But looking at the results 2 months later, it was really incredible to see. And stepping back and looking at those 2 months as a whole for clients, which usually I look at 15 days to 30 days for clients, this was kind of a bigger step back. And it actually, I had set us up for not only those 2 months, but a game plan for that third month, just so I knew where I was going with everything. The results were great. For one of my clients in particular, their social media, their Instagram in particular, their engagement, their impressions, their reach was all up 300%. So there was so much benefit to doing these plans in advance. So Nikki's saying, I don't know what to post and I'm not comfortable with my copywriting skills. I hear that a lot. Jennifer says, I can only post about 1 week in advance because I aim to include current newest works in my feed. That's fair, but you can still kind of have a loose game plan. So I'll talk through kind of how to look at it broadly and then narrow down. So the first thing I want to say is that we're not creating content to create content. We're not just doing this to do this. We're doing it with a goal, and my goal is always sales. it's never followers. Yeah, it's sort of engagement. It's definitely conversation. But at the end of the day, the goal of the content we're creating is to lead to sales. So that's what I'm always focusing on. You could have a lot of different goals, which we'll talk through some of those. But ultimately, we want to sell our product. So if you're ever feeling like, oh, okay, well, content creation, all of this, like, does it matter? It does matter, because we want to drive sales. Lindsay says, I always second guess what is valuable to my clients' customers to see online and end up changing my content plans. Yes, that's something I see a lot too. And I'll get into that a little bit, but really consistency is so important. So putting a plan in place and sticking with it, always analyzing the results and maybe tweaking, but you have to give your content plan some time before you decide to switch it up. So here's what we're going to talk about in this webinar. First off, where to start. And I'll give you some questions to consider and kind of where you should, even if you do feel like you have a content plan now, it might be good to step back and answer some of these questions I'm going to ask you. Where to post, which is a big question. What platform should we be posting on? What's working now? What makes sense for our brand? Where's our client? What to post. So we'll be covering some ideas and some brainstorming techniques of what to put out there, and then how to create content. I'll give you some tips, and then how to align your content. And this is a really important one that we don't necessarily always think about. Karin says, I know better and know I should be planning ahead, but I always feel like I'm scrambling to get everything done. Yes, totally. So important to get ahead of everything so that you're not scrambling. So on the topic of being a mom now, my baby had vaccines yesterday and I had a big day today. I'm doing this and then I'm going live later. And I have a couple other projects I'm working on. But luckily, because of my content planning, I didn't have to scramble to do anything because everything was planned out in advance already. He did not take the shots well. He was up screaming a lot of last night. Content planning is huge for life stuff. So you have that whole factor of it, it'll make your life easier. You won't be scrambling. And then secondly, it will help you figure out how to look in advance and not just be posting to post, to have like a strategy that's thought out and everything is in alignment. And that's how you're really going to be consistent. And that's how your audience is going to like you and then really know you and then trust you. A few more comments in the chat here. I've actually been planning my content a month in advance for the past few months, and it's helped me be so much more intentional and has given me so much more time to work on other areas of my business. And I have seen boosted engagement as well. Yes, this works. So anytime I get a question of how do I grow my followers? How do I increase my engagement? It really comes down to consistency. And I never really walk designers through in these free webinars I do how to be consistent, but how you become consistent is planning ahead and really being clear on what your strategy is. So Paula says, initially, how to create content create a comprehensive brand and tie content into that. Yes. How do you take your brand and decide what content to post and make sure everything's working together? I like the idea of planning ahead, but don't feel confident about topics. Worry about how it fits into the overall message. Just a lot of hesitation leading to scrambling. Yes, that is tough. I think it's really hard to figure out what you want to say, who you are, what's your brand. Branding is a huge topic and it's very vague and it's hard to explain. So let's kind of get into it. That's a great segue. Where to start? First off, you need to know your brand, and that's hard. It's not easy because a lot of you might be makers or designers, and you've come from, creating a product and then wanting to sell that product, and now trying to figure out the marketing aspect. And the marketing aspect includes knowing your brand. That's the start of everything. Why are you doing what you're doing? So here are some questions to answer. What is your core message? What makes you unique? What are your goals? Who is your ideal customer? That's so important to know who we're talking to, who's buying our product, who do we want to buy our product? And this is a tough one to ask yourself, but why should people care? And that's, I think, one of the hardest things to really face is like, am I putting out content that people care about? When it comes to your core message, because I know that's a really tough one, it's hard to get there, but it's really asking yourself, why do I do what I do? And so I'm going to be using myself as an example and my content as an example often throughout this. But my why, my core message is I'm here to support independent designers. And that's been my core message since I started my business in 2016. And it feels so real and innate to me now. And I know that all of you can get to that point too. It takes time and it's something you're always tweaking. And when I'm working with my full-time clients, when I was working with Todd Reed, I used to have meetings with Todd every week. And we would be talking about his brand, and he had a very clear brand. He knew what he wanted to say. He knew who he was. He knew all of these things, but we would still talk about it every single week in our marketing meetings. And it's something that you need to revisit often and really be thinking about often. So it's not something that you come to overnight. So if anybody's like, I'm still trying to figure out what my brand is, just keep in mind that every big company, every designer out there who you think is really established and knows what they're doing is constantly looking at this and answering these questions. Definitely on a yearly basis, probably on a quarterly basis, and sometimes often on a weekly basis. So just keep all of that in mind, write down these questions and try to answer them and keep revisiting them and you'll come to it. So this is where to start. I'm just going to check the chat real quick to see what else has come in. So I'm struggling with keeping posts relevant to what's happening in real time and planning ahead, getting bogged down by the logistics of managing all the different platforms. And Jillian's doing Reels, TikTok stories, and the Instagram feed. And I've noticed your videos actually, Jillian from Broken Plates. You're doing a lot of video content, which is great. I'll get a little bit more into this in a few slides, or maybe it's my next slide, but it's a lot to manage. So it's really important to think about where your client is, where people are responding, and look at results and then lean into that and do more of what's working. Caro says, I fear being too monotonous and posting too much, which leads to me not posting at all. It's a vicious cycle. So anybody who's feeling that way, and I'll keep repeating this, but it is so important to remember that you want to show up consistently and almost repetitively. I hate saying that because it does start to feel monotonous. It starts to feel like you're bored by your content. So why would anybody else be interested in your content? But you have to show up and continue to show up consistently with the same message said in different ways for your client to resonate with it. And I've seen this work over and over again. And it's really hard to step back and be like, okay, well, I want to just be posting new stuff all the time. There's so much else you could be posting that will lead to sales and will lead to continuing to tell your and reinforce your brand story. Maria says, I have two different kind of pieces, a more commercial line and an artistic sculptural line, and have different price ranges. It has been difficult to manage the difference on Instagram. I usually post the more artistic work because that's the one I want to be known as. How would you manage something like that? So I think that it's really important to, when in the previous or in the slide where we're asking these questions, I think it's really important to understand how these collections work together. And if they don't work together, and if you're talking to two different audiences, you might want to separate the two. But if you can figure out a way to tell the story of both of them together, I would do that. So maybe you're talking to two different audiences, but the story of why you have these collections, it really comes from the same place. Or maybe you like these pieces styled together, because I talk to artists often who have a one-of-a-kind collection and a production line, but the way they style these pieces are mixing them together, matching them together, wearing them together, and that's how their clients end up wearing them too. So that's two different collections, but you can really tell the same story with them. So I would think about, do these collections make sense together, or are they vastly different? And do I want to separate them, is what I would think about. Laura says, I don't have many online sales and I'm not sure how to shift my content. Okay, that's a big question too. It's like, I'm not getting sales. How do I get to sales? So let's dive into the meat of this a little bit more. So where to post. And it's so important to focus and then diversify. So to Jillian, who is posting on all different kinds of platforms and managing all different types of content, my advice might be to look at which one is really performing the best for you, which one is meeting your goals. If your goal is sales, which one is really leading to the most sales. Focus on that. When you feel like you really have a rhythm there and you have it almost on autopilot where you feel like you're ahead of the game, you know what you're sharing, then you can add in another platform. So you don't want to be kind of half doing everything. You want to really focus on the one that's working, or the one that you enjoy the most, or the one that makes the most sense, or the one that fits your audience best, and then start adding in more. So here are some places that you want to consider posting. Instagram, and Instagram now is this huge platform. And if you've been to my Instagram chats before, you've probably heard me walk through all of this, but there's so many places to post within Instagram itself. So there's your feed, which is a static post, and it's essentially your secondary website. I think this is really important to have. You don't have to be posting there every day, but to have this and showing up consistently, maybe once a week, I think that's great. Then you have stories, which I think are a great tool to use. And I think that's something that you should really consider trying out, seeing if your audience is there. But this is where you're posting photos and 15-second video clips, and they appear together kind of in a slideshow format and last for 24 hours. And this is really where it's like the gateway to your direct messages. People can be seeing, maybe you at your bench working on a new one of a kind, and they can shoot you a DM right there, say, hey, I'm interested in this piece. There's also a lot of tools there in terms of like polls and question boxes, and there's great ways to get your client to engage with you or your follower to engage with you. Then you have live, which I think is a really cool tool as well. You can show up live and then you can share it on your IGTV. So it's kind of 2-in-1, which is nice too, because you're getting that live content and then you're also saving it to IGTV. So you're only doing the work once, which is nice. But you can broadcast for up to 4 hours, which I don't recommend going a full 4 hours probably. And then again, it can be saved to IGTV. The nice thing about live is it's a real community builder. You can have people there chatting with you like all of you are here live. You're going to be getting more out of this than maybe the people watching the replay, just because you can ask questions in real time and I'm going to be able to answer them. And then it feels like you're all in the same room with me. And honestly, I do wish I was doing this with all of you in the same room with me, because that would be super fun. But it really builds the community aspect of it all. And then IGTV, you can pre-record videos if you're not comfortable going live. I sometimes don't love going live because it's terrifying, even when you have notes. But pre-recording, you can do something like that, 15 seconds to 10 minutes, and you can share a preview in your feed. So if you're looking to do longer form video, then that's a great place to do it. And then the newest thing is Reels, which is essentially like TikTok. And it's videos up to 30 seconds. A preview can be shared on your feed. And these videos are a little bit more casual, fun. There's usually music involved or dancing or pointing, things like that. And then we have Facebook, which some of you might have clients on Facebook. Usually people who started their business many years ago or have an older client tend to have great success with Facebook. And then there's also something that you can tap into, which is your personal Facebook, which we don't always post there, but it's always good to kind of check in because you might have clients there. And then LinkedIn is another underused social media platform. And there's a lot of opportunity there if you have a strong network. What you would want to post on a LinkedIn page would probably be more of an introduction and more press that you're getting, things that you want to share, a new collection launch. I wouldn't necessarily do the same kind of post that you do on Instagram there, but it's definitely a platform to consider if you have a network. And then one that's really important is email marketing, which I'll talk a little bit more about in this chat, but there's so much opportunity with email marketing. So if you were going to ask me what worked for my clients and designers I work with in this past year, I would say utilizing a strong Instagram strategy. So putting effort into Instagram, not to grow your following, but to talk to the followers that you have, and then aligning that with email marketing. So that's what I'm going to focus on here, because a lot of people shy away from email marketing. Let me know in the chat if you have an email marketing strategy or you are overwhelmed by it and don't, or let me know how often you send out emails. I'd love to know. It is so important to touch base with your email list. It's another great touch point. Some people aren't on social media or don't check in on social media regularly. So it's so important. Yes, like a newsletter or an e-blast, anything like that. Cindy does it twice a month, which is great. I think twice a month is great, and I will get a little bit deeper into that. And then the other thing is a blog. So a lot of people have kind of stepped back from blogging. I've noticed they're doing more of those types of posts on Instagram. But when we get to talking about how to align all this, I'll talk a little bit about repurposing. Estelle is emailing once a month. Nikki emails her very tiny list. There's no email list too tiny. If you have 10 people on your list, you should still get in the rhythm of putting emails together. And then you can utilize your social media following or collection launches or anything like that to grow this email list. I think it's really important to have an email list or to talk to your email list, because social media, Instagram, Facebook, all those things can go away tomorrow, but your email, people's emails, that contact information won't. So it's just a more secure way to keep track of your clients. So I think it's crucial to not only have and try to grow your email list, but also to check in with them regularly. Carol sends out emails when I have online sales. So I would get to touching base with them more regularly, because when you do decide to have a sale or do a promotion or anything like that, you'll get better results. Jess says, no email strategy here. I feel repetitive because of the overlap from Instagram. I probably am probably wrong when I assume if someone already saw it, they don't want emails about it. So it's so important to touch base with people in multiple ways about the same thing. And it's interesting. I've been doing this for a really long time, 12 years, jewelry industry, 10 years. And I've used a similar strategy where you're really talking about the same things on all the different platforms, and you kind of circle back to them regularly, especially if you have like big one-of-a-kind pieces that you've been trying to sell for a long time. But sometimes I'll have talked about a piece that debuted a year, 2 years ago, and I'll circle back to share it again, and people think it's new. They're so excited about it. It's really, really interesting to me, and especially as Instagram gets a little more saturated, or should I say a lot more saturated. This past year has been wild for people joining Instagram trying to sell their product. It's so important that you touch base multiple times, because I think about how I utilize Instagram, and it's so hard for me to remember or keep track of what all these different designers are doing. And I love getting a reminder in my email, especially if it's a collection launch, because sometimes I'll see it in my feed and be excited about it, but forget to like it or forget to save it. And then it pops up in my inbox and I'm thinking about it. And you're reminding me, and I'm going to your website. It's so, so important to get rid of that mindset that you're bothering people. If somebody unsubscribes from your email list or unfollows you, they were never going to purchase from you. So it's almost good to shift, although I do have a hard time when people unsubscribe from my email list or unfollow me. It doesn't feel good, but we want to think about that as actually a win, because that means we're kind of getting rid of somebody who's never going to purchase from us. So how's that for a mindset shift? Hopefully that's helpful, but it is hard. Nikki's asking, would you suggest making a poster in Photoshop? What's the proper format? So I use MailChimp, which is a free platform. There's a lot of different platforms you can use to send email. But you don't have to do a graphic. You don't need to be a graphic designer. You can just have a beautiful header image or a beautiful photo And just write to your audience. And, I can get into a little more about this, but to the people who are asking about copywriting or feeling uncomfortable with copywriting, I fully understand. A lot of you are visual artists, makers. Writing is not necessarily your strong point. I really, really recommend writing like you speak and not trying to kind of make it sound like marketing jargon or try to make it feel formal if you're not formal or your brand's not formal. Just talk to your audience. So think about how you talk to artists, or I'm sorry, how you talk to clients at craft shows or events in person when you're selling a piece. Think about that. Or, think about how you would describe the piece and do a voice memo and transcribe it. I think that's my best advice for artists and designers or anybody who feels uncomfortable with copywriting. Just write like you speak. I think that that's what resonates with your audience the most. So you could just share a beautiful image of your latest work and say, hey, how are you doing? I wanted to show you these pieces that I've been working on. I'm really inspired by sunsets and like the brilliant orange and pink that I've been seeing in the sky lately, something like that. Like, I hope you'll take a moment to check out my newest pieces, click here to visit my website, and then I'd have some more product images at the bottom. So you can keep it really simple and straightforward. And I'll get into more about how to plan this out. So it's not just like, oh, I need to send an email. We want to have this all kind of thought out in advance so we know what we're doing. Okay. So now let's get into what to post. And if you've been to my chats before, you've heard me talk about these content types that we want to think about. But essentially what you want to do is think about 5 types of content you want to focus on sharing, on creating and sharing. And I'm just going to edit my PowerPoint here because, oh, my image is in the way. Thanks for joining live. Sorry about that typo or that issue with formatting. So you want to focus on 5 different types of content. 2 primary, and this is your key messaging, and it's going to be about 70% of the content you share, and 3 secondary. And these 3 secondary are going to be what supports the primary and helps your brand stand out, is the more unique facets of it. And it also supports your key messaging, and all of this ties back to your product. So questions to consider is, first off, how does this content tie back to my product? So if a big part of what you want to share and something that resonates with your clients is like you love baking, and you get really creative in the kitchen, and that's a hobby of yours, but you're an artist, you make handcrafted jewelry, and those 2 things, how do you tie them together? So you always want to be, when you're sharing content about baking or like what you baked this past weekend, you want to share it in context, taking a break from the bench to head to the kitchen. Or, I created this cake and used this purple frosting, and I'm really into the color purple now, and you can see it on my jewelry bench too. So like, how do you tie these 2 things back and forth? I would really think about that. So it's really great to share hobbies and things that are important to you as the artist, and, makes you a unique person and resonates with your clients, because a lot of times some of that content you get more response to. And I talk to designers all the time who are like, I am so frustrated because I get more response when I share a picture of my dog. And I personally get a ton of response when I share something from my garden. And that has nothing to do with what I'm selling. It has nothing to do with jewelry, which is the main focus of what I talk about. But it's a great way to connect with your client. So it is important to think about supporting content and not just always talking about your product and your brand, and all of those things. It's good to kind of bring in some personal side of it. So questions to consider, again, coming back to this is, and let me get that text box gone. So what will my ideal client connect with? How will this content help my brand stand out? And how will this content relate back to my product? And when we're thinking about these like 5 different content types, the first 2 are probably your product and your process. I think those 2 are really important. And then your secondary ones could be, again, a hobby like baking, or say you do some other artistic thing. It could be where you live, especially if you have a lot of local clients. Asheville, North Carolina is something I talk about often on my Instagram, because I love it. And there's so many cool artists here, and it kind of aligns with my core messaging, or key messaging, which is I support independent designers. So that's part of what I share. But you can think about all different things that might make sense for you and your brand, and really define them. And you can always tweak it, see what's resonating, switch it up, but that's a good place to start in terms of what to post. So then we're going to get into creating content. So first you want to brainstorm ideas. I mean, all of this might feel a little bit obvious, but some ideas that I want to talk through, because I hear all the time, I don't know what to post. And let me know in the chat if you often feel like you don't know what to post, because I just hear it all the time. But all of you, I know, have so much to say. And your client is super interested in what you have to say. I've seen the process of jewelry making. I've been into shops, but I'm not a maker, and I'm still endlessly excited when I see the process and the inspiration behind the pieces. It's just so exciting. And then also seeing what like makers and artists and designers do in their free time. I love that as well. I love getting an inside glimpse. And so does your client, especially since your client is probably more removed from the making process or the jewelry industry than I am, of course. So they're going to be interested in what you have to say. So you want to tell a story, your story. So important to tell your story and be repetitive in this. I always say to show up at least once a month, or once every maybe 6 weeks or so, to show up and reintroduce yourself. Amelia says, I really like to see the process from other designers. Yeah, it's really cool to get a look at somebody's bench and see how they think through it and see what they're making. So, reintroduce yourself regularly. And then also when you're posting products, you can tie in your story, you can tie in your inspiration, you can tie in a little bit of inspiration about the process. So show your process. So fun, so important. People love to see behind the scenes. They love it so much. And when you're sharing this behind the scenes stuff, I would keep in mind that you want to be talking to your audience. You want to be talking to people who aren't makers. And a lot of times I get this question of like, how do I get more followers who aren't designers or gem dealers or things like that? Talk to somebody who doesn't know about making, talk like you're talking to somebody who doesn't know the terminology, and, paint like a really, interesting picture about it. Like, on the fly, trying to think of how to say this. So you show a photo of your bench and you could say, here I am choosing gemstones. I love how these colors work together. And it's really inspiring some future pieces or something like that. So be a little bit more romantic and general about how you're talking about it, I would say, and less like I'm setting bezels right now, or I'm like soldering this thing. And certainly you could mention some of these terms, but I think that keeping it more general for your client, depending on your client, of course, you want to know who that is. But you really want to speak to them and not speak to other makers or other gem dealers. And when you're talking about a gemstone, kind of on the same topic, talk about what's interesting about it. So like a Priba tourmaline is like this beautiful, I don't know gemstones that well, so I'm so sorry if I talk about this incorrectly, but I'm so interested in this stone because of the color. It's like this teal, interesting color, and I love it, but you know how to talk about it probably better than I do. Tell your followers what to look for. Look for this unique inclusion in this gemstone, or look for this flash of rainbow in this moonstone. Help educate them a little bit, and again, talk about it like a little bit less technical and more in a more romantic way. But I think education is something that's a really cool thing that you guys could be doing, that all of you could be infusing into your work, especially if you use gemstones or you handcraft things. So for one of the designers I create copy for, we're always talking about how her work is handcrafted and then describing what handcrafted actually is, because handcrafted is a term kind of thrown around all the time now, but it's like this chain was handcrafted, meaning I made every single jump ring, and I created every single link of this chain, and each piece was has this beautiful texture on it, and it feels so good on your skin, and you're going to love wearing this. sort of thing. So it's really important to kind of really tell the story there. I kind of gone off on a lot of tangent there, but so you want to tell your story, think about showing your process, sharing your inspiration. So say you're not a maker, and I'm speaking like all of you are makers, but I know a lot of you might be designers as well, or maybe not jewelry people. Share your inspiration, because I love to see kind of how designers come up with color combinations or different shapes. What's inspiring that? Is it architecture? Is it, you know, nature, but get specific about that? Like, is it, the azalea bushes in your front yard? Or I live in, again, Asheville, North Carolina, and the mountains are beautiful. And if you walk up my street, you kind of come to this hill and you look over and there's all these, like, you can see the mountain ranges, and I'm endlessly inspired by that. So if I were creating jewelry inspired by nature, I'm sure those mountains would play into like what I'm inspired by. So I would want to tell that story and show that view. So get really specific about sharing your inspiration. I think that's a really interesting thing to do. And then think about frequently asked questions. So say you do custom work, and you get asked all the time about custom work by people who don't really understand the process. That could become content that you create, is sharing the story about how to work with you on a custom project. What's the process like? Can you really show it in steps? Can you do a series of posts over, say, 5 days where you're showing each step of the process? What other questions do you get asked frequently? You know, maybe people are asking about your garden or your dog, and that becomes your secondary content. That's a really great insight that I don't think we think about enough. And think about what people ask you, you know, all the time at craft shows. If they, you know, there's a particular piece in your collection that people are often interested in, you know, what it looks like on, or how you chose the gemstone, or what the inspiration is behind it. Like, that can all become things that become content that you write about or include in your plan. So also, I'm very into reporting. So think about what past content with high engagement has worked for you. And I always like to look at what product performs really well, and see if that aligns with the products I want to be promoting. Or maybe I decide to promote the product more because I see it doing really well. Then I kind of shift gears and, you know, think about how can I tell more story about this particular piece because people are interested in it. So that's what you can use your analytics for, seeing what people are interested in and then share more content about that product. And then products you want to promote. So if you're doing a launch, if you're launching a collection, you want to think about this when you're doing your content plan and putting content together. So then when it comes to doing photos and videos, you really want to set aside time for this. And I like to have a folder on my phone of images that I want to use eventually. And so I take a lot of photos at once and I set aside time. So I set up it's right next to me, an area where I take photos next to a window. I just use my iPhone, both for my clients and for myself. I'm usually just using my iPhone, and I have different props and I have them all in drawers here, and I pull them out and I just set aside sometimes like 4 hours, which I know a lot of you don't have that time to set aside all in one block, but set aside an hour maybe and just take a bunch of photos of pieces that you want to be promoting, things you want to be posting about right now, and just save them on your phone. This is called batching, when you do kind of the same task all at once. And rather than, you know, doing a photo here, writing a caption, you know, a few hours later, if you did another thing, it's so much easier to kind of do it all at once. And it will help, as you think about all this together, it will help it all make sense in one story. Okay, so you want to use, when you're kind of taking these photos or creating photos with your jewelry, using like a consistent color or prop. I just wanted to mention that. That's a really great way to continue branding yourself. I use olive green a lot, and I put on this shirt today because I was like, oh, that makes sense with my brand, sort of thing. But think about all of this because, you know, the photography aspect of it is important. So are the captions. The captions, I would argue, are maybe more more important, and people are reading them. And so your photos are a little bit, you don't have to have beautiful, high res, expensive model shots or product shots. More casual content actually works now, works really well now. We want more casual. We want it to feel raw and like in the moment, even though we're planning ahead. But you don't have to be an expert photographer to really find success. So I just want to put that out there. Cassandra says, yes, I've been batching all of my content and it's been a total game changer. So yes, doing the same task at once all together will make everything move faster for you. And then I really want to mention repurposing. So I said earlier that you want to be consistent and almost repetitive with what you're putting out there. So repurposing content is a great way to do that. And then also thinking about repurposing content in the sense like you did this really great Instagram post where you're telling this wonderful story. Take that and do an e-blast as well. And then you don't have to rewrite it. You have to maybe tweak it to like put a greeting in and a sign off and maybe have a strong call to action, change a few things, but you have your content ready to go for an e-blast. And then you can use the same thing for a blog post. So you're not creating endless content. You're creating thoughtful content and then using it in different places and tweaking it to make sense for whatever platform you're using it on. So I'm going to get into aligning content, and then I'm going to show you how I use Google Docs and how I plan my content and what that looks like. And feel free to leave a question in the chat or the Q&A box that we can get to. So aligning content. You want to really determine a theme. So I like to step back month by month, and then I usually look at a quarter at a time too. So 3 months at a time, but I look at each month individually. So for that month, so we're in June now, and the easiest example would be birthstones. So pearls, moonstone, there's another one that I'm blanking on, but say you have a collection that has quite a few pearl pieces or moonstone pieces, then it might be a good time to have that as a key theme. That doesn't mean that's the only thing you talk about this month, but that means that's something you keep kind of coming back to. Alexandrite, thank you. So determine that theme, and then note any key dates, events, launches. I like to look at a calendar as well, so that I can make sure that I'm not missing anything. Like June, Father's Day, I totally blanked on Father's Day, but that might be something that you want to acknowledge and plan it in advance, what you want to say. Set goals. So say this month you want to grow your email list, so that needs to become something that you put into your content. So you want to note that in your document, which I'll show you an example in a minute here of what that looks like. You want to note all of these things. And then you want to reiterate your key messaging. So when I'm creating these documents for clients, I'm always copy and pasting the key messaging into it as I'm writing, so that I always know exactly what that key messaging is, even though I do know it. I don't need to keep looking at it, but having it there I think is so helpful, because if you are like writing or thinking about something to say, then you can it helps you stay focused and aligned and all of those things. So I like to reiterate that. And then you'll see this in a second too, but social media, you're going to visually create a grid and you're going to gather the photos and organize them. I like to use Dropbox, but you could do it on your phone or use any kind of platform that makes sense for you. And then you're going to draft your captions. So you're starting with this like broad view of what you want to do for the quarter, what your goals are, what you're thinking about for this quarter, and then you're drilling it down to month, and then you're looking at the month, and then you're getting into what your actual posts are. And same with emails and blog posts. You're going to outline this content and then put them on the calendar. When do you want to send this email? When do you want to post this blog post? So I'm going to switch over to show you my document and walk you through it. So this is me looking at June 2021. And here are my goals. And my goals are to promote the Stay Gold Collective, which if you don't know what that is, I'm going to do a little pitch at the end here. So don't worry about that. And then I want to showcase my personal jewelry collection. I haven't been going to trade shows. So I've been really leaning on showcasing my jewelry because I like to post photos I take and stories I tell. So I also have some available antiques that I'm selling, antique pieces. So that's something I want to mention and talk about. I want to connect with my audience always. I always am looking for interaction and conversation. It's one of my favorite things about social media. And then I want to establish myself as an expert in the jewelry industry. So that's a goal that I'm continuing to work on, like continuing to establish myself as an expert in the jewelry industry. So my audience is jewelry lovers, because I post jewelry, and some people are just interested in jewelry that follow me, and then independent jewelry designers, because we all know that my key messaging is to support independent jewelry designers. So again, my key messaging, supporting jewelry designers. How can I move this up and down? Here we go. Okay, so supporting jewelry designers, and then I want to focus on the power of community, because that's something I've been thinking about a lot. And then with the Stay Gold Collective, I've been seeing the power of it, and I want to continue to tap into that. And then my secondary messaging is show me your jewelry, which is something I love, seeing other people's jewelry, and I want my followers to show me how they style their jewelry and their collections and how they wear it and all of that. And then the fact that jewelry is meaningful and each piece has a story. So that's something secondary that I want to talk about as well. And then I put my dates of my emails, and this is truly, I know this is just a Google Doc, but this is how I do it for all of my clients. And some of my clients are pretty big. And I do it this way because it's easy for everyone to understand. We don't have to do anything fancy. It doesn't need to be overwhelming. We just want to understand what we want to say, what goals we want to meet, and when we want to put these things out there, so we can kind of look at it as a whole. So emails, I want to send an email to designers to promote the Stay Gold Collective on June 7th. And then I want to send an email to my consumer list about available antiques on June 28th. So I'm going to show you my grid and how I've written the content, but the emails align with when I'm talking about this particular thing on social media. And I think the dates might be wrong down here. Sorry, this is my first time doing this presentation about content planning. Thank you for being here for my first round. There was a question in the chat about favorite social media content planning. I've used Buffer, but I'm interested in switching. So a lot of people like Tailwind. Planoly is another one. I would say Later is a good one to use. That's one I've used before. And some of these things are really nice because it helps you plan out your grid. So you see how I've created this grid of images here. How I do this is I use an app called It's free. You upload photos that you're interested in using, and then you can drag and drop them so that you can see how they look together. And I like to, I'm guessing a lot of you are visual. I'm a very visual person, so it helps me kind of see where everything works together. So we don't need to worry. I just want to say here, we don't need to worry about what our grid looks like, but we do want to worry about how everything aligns with what we're doing with our email marketing. And we do want to be somewhat conscious of all the photos we're putting in our Instagram feed to feel like our brand, because as I mentioned much earlier in this chat, it's kind of like a secondary website for us. So we want people to come to our Instagram feed and know who we are and what we're about pretty quickly. So, and if you've watched my other chats, they're on YouTube if you haven't, but I talk about what to do with your Instagram profile just to make sure that you're really strong in your messaging when somebody comes to your feed. So, okay, so I put this together in I just wrote it in the chat there. If you want to check it out, there's a free version. You upload the images you're interested in using, and then you can move them around. So I do that, I drop that in, and yeah, my dates are wrong. Sorry about that. Just ignore the 4-1. Think of it as 6-1. So I am putting in the date that I want to post, a little thumbnail of the image, and then I'm writing my caption. And then I'm making notes on what I want to put in stories, because I think it's really hard to plan out stories. So you have all these images in a folder on Dropbox or on your phone, and then I just make notes of what I want to share here. So the this is the caption I wrote. While I'm not someone who is always drawn to trends, especially when it comes to jewelry, I do love charms, a trend that's become increasingly popular this year. And then I want people to show me their charms, their charm collection. So this is a way for me to also push user generated content or encourage user generated content. So get people to take photos, share them with me so I can share them and tag them, and then they'll share with their audience so that I expand my reach. And then I want to share images of charms that people send me, of my favorite charms. And then I did a reels where I show all my charms, kind of putting them on a cluster necklace. So I'm going to share that to stories, because you spend so much time on reels and some of this other content, you want to reshare it. So I plan to do that. And then my next post, and I only post once a week. So you'll see me only posting like once, maybe twice a week. That's fine for a strategy. That's fine to think about just posting once a week. We don't need to post every day. For my clients, I often post every day, and I think that's a fine strategy as well. But if you're thinking about content and you're feeling super overwhelmed, 1 post per week and 2 emails per month is sufficient, as long as you do it consistently. So, and I think we can all manage that. So this is one where this is a post I planned where I'm reintroducing myself. I'm reintroducing the Stay Gold Collective. And I'm sure a lot of you here don't know what the Stay Gold Collective is. And again, I'm going to tell you at the end of this chat, but I feel like I've been talking about it endlessly. And I feel like I'm always talking about it, but there's still designers who come up to me or join and they're like, I didn't know this was available. I didn't know this was a thing you had available. So it goes to show, and it endlessly reminds me that showing up consistently is so important. And again, this happens with my clients too. We share a piece that people think, is new, but it's really been in the collection for 2 years, and they end up buying it because they love it. So it's really important. I've also seen from clients where somebody like sees this piece repetitively over and over again. They keep hearing the story about it. They love it. And eventually when the timing's right, they purchase it because they, seen it enough times. They can't stop thinking about it. It's just an endless reminder when it shows up in the feed every month. So it's really important to stay consistent and somewhat repetitive. So, and then I have notes for stories. I want to share some testimonials from members of the Stay Gold Collective, and I want to do a question box asking if people have questions. So then a post about where do you keep your jewelry? I want to connect with my audience. This is a great question. Everybody, I posted this already and I got some good response of where people keep their jewelry. I keep my jewelry in these little ceramic dishes around my house. And then, so in stories, I want to share pictures of little piles of jewelry around the house and a picture of my jewelry box. And then I shared my favorite earrings. I want to share my collection. So I share my favorite earrings, and then in stories, I share more pieces from my favorite collection. So do you see how all of this is kind of working together, and we're thinking about, okay, well, we have these e-blasts going out at these specific times, so it's going to align with this Instagram content. And then because my feed posted this, I'm going to do this in stories. And then I did this reel, so I'm going to reshare it. All of these things are working together, and they all make sense together. So you're not coming out of left field sharing a one-of-a-kind piece that you've never talked about and don't have any extra content to share with because you've been talking about your production line. You want to make sure you're kind of telling these narratives and staying consistent in them. And then, so if you do decide you want to shift gears and start sharing your one-of-a-kind collection, you kind of ease into that. Hey, I've been working on this one-of-a-kind collection. Here's some process shots. I can't wait to share it with you. So there was a question earlier I'll just dive into now about tips for growing your email list. When you're doing a launch or you're talking about something new, you want to leverage your social media to help grow your email list. So if you're doing a collection launch, you can be asking people to sign up for your list or telling them, hey, sign up for my list and you'll get a first look at this new collection. It's one of a kind. It's going to go fast. You're going to want to be on this email list, and ask people to send a direct message with their email. I think we get very caught up with, okay, well, if you want to sign up for my email list, go over to my website and type your email in. How do you make it as easy as possible for somebody to sign up for your email list? And not only that, why should they care? Why should they sign up for your email list? Give them a reason. And it can be like an incentive, like 10% off, or it could be some urgency, like I'm launching this new one-of-a-kind collection that's going to go fast. Or it could be just like, I have something really exciting I'm going to share with you. If you're on the email list, you're going to know first. So those are all reasons somebody could sign up for your list, and you want to just make it as easy as possible for them to sign up. So just DM me your email address and I will add you to the list. And then this post on the 28th, which I'm also sending that e-blast, if you recall, to consumers on my list that I want to show these antiques to. So I'm also doing a post about this ring that's found a new home, but let me show you some other available rings that I have. And then my last post that I have planned out is today's ring stack. How do I create a ring stack? Here's my rings. Let me show you my collection of rings. So that's how I put together my content. That's how I think about it. And so, as I said in the beginning, I think the most important places to focus on are Instagram and email marketing. If you have a stronger audience on Facebook, then maybe focus on Facebook and email marketing. I think email marketing should definitely be in it. I think you should repurpose your email marketing and Instagram content to a blog if you have one on your website, because it's nice to update that, it benefits your SEO, all of these things, super important. So I think it's important to repurpose. But my content strategy focuses on Instagram and email marketing. So you want to think about where you want to be posting, where your audience is, and then put together a document where you're sharing. Thanks for being here, Lindsay. The replay will be sent out tomorrow around this time. So if you need the replay. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. I want to kind of open this up for questions now. This is a lot of information and I have so much more to say about this, and it's a big topic, but I wanted to kind of give you some tips to get going. So I'd love to know what questions you have. And I'd love to know what questions you have. I'm going to tell you about the Stay Gold Collective right now, and then I'll answer all of these questions. And we still have a half hour. I actually finished right at an hour, which is what my goal was. And then I set aside 30 minutes for questions, so feel free to send them my way. But the Stay Gold Collective is a group I put together, and it is I put it together because, my message is, and my goal is to support independent designers. And as a consultant, I was often writing proposals that designers couldn't afford or weren't ready for. And I wanted to figure out a way to help with the sales and marketing and give you affordable consulting. So it's a group. We meet once a week on Zoom, and I bring in industry experts, and I answer your questions. We have topics about where I dive into this a little bit deeper, where we talk about planning a launch, promoting a launch. We dive into all this a lot deeper, content planning, and then we just brainstorm ideas together. I'm always available to answer questions. So what you're getting when you sign up for the Stay Gold Collective is weekly Zoom chats, 1 or 2 a month with an industry expert. This week we're meeting with a sales rep, Tara Flory from Stance Representation. She's going to be chatting with us about wholesale. And I have some more great chats lined up. If you sign up, you get access to all my past chats. The Stay Gold Collective has been around for 2 years. So that's a lot of content covering everything in the sales and marketing realm: PR, wholesale, direct-to-consumer sales, oh my gosh, so many things. Email marketing. We talk about email marketing a lot. We talk about Instagram a lot. We do hot seats. There's so many good things about being in this group, and you get so much good information. And it's only $50 a month, which, with all that you're getting and full access to me is a total steal. Not only all of this information, all of this content, all of this support, but there's also an incredible community involved as well. And a lot of them are here now, but say you're going live, we all come and watch your live on Instagram and support you and things like that. And we all support each other with these hot seat chats and everything like that. It's a really cool community, and it's really been great this past year especially. But I love this group. I am passionate about helping independent designers, and I would love to invite you to join. message me for information. If you are interested in joining, I'll put the link in the chat here. If you sign up based on this webinar, I'll also provide a free 30-minute consulting call. So we'll hop on the phone, we'll talk specifically about your brand. And that's always helpful because when you're in the group, I'll know more what you're working on. I'll be able to kind of send you feedback specifically, which I do for everyone, whether we've had a call or not. But this is a group that's affordable, that we do these group calls and things like that, but you also get direct feedback, and all for $50 a month. So I'd love for you to join. I'm going to put the link here. And feel free to message me with questions to see if it's right for you. You don't have to commit to anything more than a month when you sign up. So you can try it out, see how it feels. And yeah, I'd love to chat with you if you have any questions about it. Okay, and all of my contact information is here. So if anybody has any specific questions. Okay, so diving into some of these questions that came up. Pros, cons of sending the same post from Instagram to Facebook. So I think this is a fine strategy if you aren't sure that you have a strong audience on Facebook, or you just kind of want to keep that. You have some people there, but not a huge amount. I think that's a fine strategy. What I would do is also go on Facebook, say once a week, once a month, and share additional content. So the things that work for the Facebook algorithm are a little bit different than what works for Instagram. And sometimes when you send the post through, it doesn't translate the same way. So what works on Facebook is links, people clicking on links. So if you're sharing an article, if you had a recent press feature, things like that, that's great to go on and share specifically to Facebook. And then also albums. So albums of photos. So somebody clicking into a photo to look at more photos, that tells Facebook that people are engaging with your content. Obviously, comments are great too for Facebook. I think it's really hard to grow a Facebook page now without spending money on advertising, which if you've asked me about ads before, I'm not a big fan of them, social media ads specifically. If you don't have a strong audience on Facebook, just sending your post there from Instagram is fine. Not worrying about Facebook is also fine. I think there's a lot of power and potential in Instagram if you're a brand that speaks to younger people, or even, a lot of people are on Instagram now. My mom's on Instagram. She loves Instagram. She likes it more than Facebook. So I think that Instagram is a really important platform to have as part of your strategy. But that was a lot of answers to that question. I think that's a fine strategy. I would go on and add a little bit extra content there. I would make sure also on Facebook that your whole profile is filled out so that you have all your information there, that you're linked to your Instagram, that everything's telling the same story and working together. So I talked about aligning content, but it's also important that you make sure that your Instagram bio and your Instagram profile picture and all of that is the same as your Facebook. I would make sure everything is really telling the same story. Do I have any experience with Pinterest? Yes, a little bit. And there's a chat in the Stay Gold Collective about Pinterest that kind of dives a little bit deeper. But I think Pinterest is, in my opinion, if I were doing Pinterest, I would focus on sharing just product from my website or things that link back to me. So things that link back to my website, pin images from blog posts, pin images from Instagram, pin images, obviously product images from your website. I think that Pinterest could work really well if you have a lower price point product. I think that it can expand your reach if you have a higher price point product. The nice thing about Pinterest that I will say is that it's pulled into Google results. So if somebody's searching for, this is Jillian asking this, and she has this cool broken plate jewelry. So if somebody's Googling broken plate jewelry, then Pinterest could be pulled up in the Google search results. So I think that's a benefit when you're doing Pinterest. I'll just throw a quick tip in here. Is you want to make sure that the title of it and the caption bit both include your name, and make sure it links back to you. But you want to make sure the title and the caption both include your brand name and all of the information about the product, because sometimes when people are repinning, it loses they take out the hyperlink or things like that. So you want to make sure everywhere includes your brand name. But there's a lot of tips with Pinterest. I don't know that it's necessarily something that if you don't have one that you want to necessarily go and start. And I do think it's really for some people a time waster. No, I think it's a time waster to be putting boards together. Like when Pinterest first came out, you would put mood boards together that like really told the story of your brand and what inspired you. I don't think that's a good strategy anymore because people really consume Pinterest in just one single pin. They're not seeing your profile as a whole. They're more just looking on their explore page or whatever that page is called, where it's like all the different pins that you might be interested in and people you follow and things like that. So I just focus on making sure you have pins from your website and things that link back to you. Okay, so another question, do you use a particular filter to make all your photos have the same tone? I seem to struggle with image color tone. I think my images look inconsistent. Any other photo tips? So my biggest tip for photos is to make sure that you're taking them in the same spot. I think that helps. I think that doing it on a day that's like well lit helps too. And using similar backgrounds helps. I'm not a great photo editor. I think I just tend to toggle the brightness to see if those work, but this is why batching is really helpful too. If you're not a great photo editor or you're not a photographer, which we aren't, we're designers, makers, business owners, doing a bunch of photos at once in the same lighting usually means that they'll all look similar. You could also use more, I'm not an expert at this, but you could use a white box, a photo box, and use lighting, set up lighting situations, but I'm not good at that. I like to do it at my window and try to take a bunch of photos at once. And I think that's most helpful. And then I tweak the brightness and warmth to kind of get them similar, but I'm not a great photo editor. But that's a great question. So my photo tip is to batch, do a bunch of photos at once, and just have really nice natural lighting. I'm wondering if I should not post anything personal on my Instagram and talk about my life, what's going on. Where's the line between helping people get to know you and feeling like they're part of your life and too much? So this is why it's so important to design or to define the types of content you want to be sharing. So it's so important to decide which aspects of your personal life, where do you want to draw the line? So for me, I'll share like my garden or like things I do in Asheville, or sometimes I'll share like flowers I see on my neighborhood walk, or some vintage pieces in my home. And but I don't feel comfortable sharing my kid or my partner. That's just like where I draw the line. I don't feel uncomfortable sharing them. I don't want to, sort of thing. So determining what you do and don't want to share is something that you can decide. I think it's good to give a look into who you are as an artist or who you are as a person. And it's really interesting, this past year, Instagram's shifted a little so that really you want to be more personal. That's what does really well. That's what performs really well. If you haven't shown a picture of your face, do it and you will get so much engagement, I promise you. If you don't feel comfortable sharing a picture of your face, that's totally fine. Show your hands at your workbench, show something that feels like it's a piece of you that you can introduce yourself with. I think that, again, make sure everything ties back to your product. So if you're sharing your dog, say like, oh, my studio dog always at my feet when I'm making pieces, tie it back to what you do, and things like that. But I think it's good to give an insight. And if you're really uncomfortable sharing any personal life, share your inspiration. I think that's a good workaround. And I think it's a pretty deep connector. And people are really interested in that. So it's really up to you. What do you think about putting your pricing in posts and stories? So I think that this does work. So a lot of people tag their products. They link Facebook and Instagram, and they're able to tag products, which I think is a fine strategy, but I think it's also fine to not do that, or to just invite people to message you. I think that if you're doing a sale, especially, and I've seen so much success with people doing sales and stories where they're crossing out the real price and putting the sale price, I think that totally makes sense. I think that a lot of times I would lean towards inviting people to message you for pricing. And then once they're like, hey, I'm interested in this piece, share the price, but not only share the price. And if you've been to any of my other past webinars, you've heard me say this, but really clientele them. So send them maybe another picture of the piece and describe why it's special. Oh, this is using a one-of-a-kind stone. It's handcrafted. I especially love this piece because I don't know, because it's inspired by the sunset. Second time I use a sunset reference, but anyway, yeah, I liked it depends on your price point too, or what makes sense, but I do think it feels more like you're telling a story, and you're sharing your brand in a more like conversational way that people can connect with when you don't necessarily put the pricing in. So I'd be thoughtful with that, and maybe experiment. That's another thing, is that that I actually didn't mention, is like, we're putting this content strategy together and we want to stay consistent with it to see the results. And experts say that it takes probably like 9 months to a year to like see results from this. I've seen results within 3 months of kind of shifting a strategy and staying really consistent in it, but you're maybe not going to see the sales really come through until maybe the 6-month mark. You want to keep staying consistent with this, because it will pay off, and you'll look back and you'll be like, oh my goodness. It will feel very slow while you're doing it, but I promise you, I've done it many, many times. I promise you it will pay off. But with little things like, do I share the pricing or do I not share the pricing? This is something you can play with and see how people respond. Does it lead to more sales if I put the price in? Or does it lead to more engagement if I don't put the price in? I think that's something you could play with. What about watermarking photos with your logo? I don't love doing that, just because what really works on social media is content that feels more in the moment and more casual and raw. So I would maybe not do that. You could do it on some photos when it makes sense maybe, but I would probably suggest not doing that. Julia says, one account or business and personal. I'm having a hard time figuring out if I should have just one account or two. What do most successful designers do? So some designers, like, it depends. So if you want to have like a private account just for family members and real life friends, where you want to share like your kids and stuff that's more personal, totally fine. I think that if you're at the point where you're a bigger company, so say you're a Todd Reed, then maybe, and I think Todd did have his own account that he was using. I think that's really interesting and interesting insight. But if you are the maker, and actually I started this thought earlier, but I didn't quite finish it. But if you're the maker and you're the only person in your business, there's no reason that you should try to make your business sound bigger than it is. You should write in I statements, and you should share a little insight to your personal life. And then it might make sense to, not have a secondary account where you're sharing more personal stuff that you don't feel like needs to be a private account. You could roll that into your business account, but keep in mind where you're putting this content. So on your feed, you're going to want people to come to your feed and think, oh, this is what this person's about. And sorry. This is what this person's about. This is what their brand's about. And yeah, so I'm so sorry about that. I just totally, anyway. So you want people to be able to come to your feed and know what you're about. So that's really important. So if you are keeping one account but sharing some personal stuff too, then you want to make sure that your feed really clearly is mostly 70% jewelry, process, your product, your brand, that, and then you're sprinkling in personal stuff. So yeah, so that's what I'd recommend there. It's always fine to have like a private account totally just for family. But yeah. Okay, some more questions here. Regarding Facebook, why does it seem like nobody likes my Facebook post other than the same people? Not to sound complainy, but why does it seem like people only like when you post a photo of yourself and seem to ignore your work? I find it frustrating at times. So Facebook, again, it's really hard to get people to see your content. It's really challenging. It's a platform that's been very monetized. So the algorithm really, it's hard to make it work for you. People love seeing people's faces. On Instagram too, you'll see your engagement is much higher. And it can be frustrating because you feel like, oh, well, people don't like my work. People aren't seeing my work, all of that. But it's an easier way to connect with you. So sometimes people don't know what to comment, or do with a post of a product, and maybe that's still registering with them. Oh, I like that product. I like this brand, but it's so much easier to say, oh my gosh, I'm growing strawberries in my garden too. You know, it's just such a great way to really connect with people and people to relate to you. So it still all is working to build the trust with your clients, which is really important to driving sales. But it can be frustrating. So if what you're putting on Facebook is not getting enough likes, and Facebook's like a platform that you want to focus on, you want to think about maybe shifting the content. So it's a really hard question to ask ourselves, to look at these questions that we had in the front here, and I'll pull that slide back up. But like, why should people care about what you have to say? You know, maybe you need to tweak it. Maybe you need to try something different. Maybe you're not connecting with them in the right way. So I think it's really, oh, sorry, I'm not even on the right side. It's really important to kind of play with, am I talking to my ideal client? Does that make sense? Okay, do you advise batching and planning content just once every quarter, or more regularly and keeping it rolling? So if you can batch for a quarter, do it. I think that's awesome. I think that's really great. Yeah, I think that's great if you can do that. It's hard. You can always batch, plan, write, and then have it all ready to go, and you can go back and tweak it. And I do that all the time. Like, say something pops up that you want to share, or you got a press feature that maybe you weren't expecting. You can go in and move stuff around, but at least you have the game plan, and you kind of know what you want to be doing. So yeah, if you can do a quarter, do it. Okay, go into the Q&A box. What other questions do you guys have? Let me know. We have 10 more minutes here. And okay, Paul says, how do you create a comprehensive brand and then create content that supports it? So answer these questions first and foremost. And then you want to think about, and like I said, it's something that sometimes you're working towards. And it's sometimes something that you're tweaking a little bit as you're going, and you're checking in with regularly. But that's a really hard question, and I have nothing but vague answers, but you want to think about answering these questions first, and then creating content that feels all in alignment with it. You can do it visually, and then do the writing portion, or you could do the writing portion and then do the visuals of it. It's hard to get to a place that's comprehensive, but you want to answer these questions and know your brand and know your message, know what makes you unique, know what your goals are, know who you're talking to, know why people should care about what you're putting out there, why people should care about your brand, and then create content from there. I've been posting 6 days a week on Instagram. I want to go down to 2 or 3 days a week. Is there a good way to do this that won't affect my reach? So what I would do is I would make those posts, those 2 to 3 posts per week that you're doing, more robust. So write more, or do a carousel post, or do a video. When you're dropping down to posting less, you want to be really, really thoughtful about what you're posting, and maybe put a little bit more effort into it, so it's less, like one sentence caption kind of thing. I would say that will help, but really you don't need to do anything big if you're switching how often you're posting. Decide you're doing 3 days a week instead of 6, and just do it, and do it consistently. So Kara's asking about influencers versus paid ads, which is best. I think that if you're looking for influencers, look for micro influencers, and be really thoughtful about the influencers that you're considering. You want to look at who's following them, and also who's engaging with their content and how much engagement they're getting. I think that with fine jewelry, it's really hard to take an influencer strategy approach to this. It's great for creating content. If there's an influencer you want to work with, that you want to send product to and have them take a bunch of photos, and then you have in the agreement you can use the photos also, that's great. That could be beneficial, and then maybe you'll reach potential clients and maybe it'll work out. But if it doesn't, you have great content that you can use. So you could think about it that way. I think that paid ads are really challenging. You want to have a big budget to put into it. You don't want to just do $10 here, $10 there. In promoting posts, you want to think about it as an overall strategy. You want to think about what you want to be promoting, and you want to have a strong call to action. So you want to have, you know, either you're promoting a sale, you're promoting a sale, or you have like a discount, or you have something exciting that you're offering, and you want to make sure all of this is telling the same message. And then there's a lot to talk about in terms of paid ads, but I think that you want to think about it like with influencers, an influencer strategy too. There's a lot more to it than just choosing an influencer. You really want to be thoughtful about that and have something specific you're promoting and have a strong call to action. Okay. So on the slides that in the Google Doc I showed you, the photo grid was created with and I just screenshotted that and dropped it into Google Doc. And then I created a table and dropped in thumbnail images of each post. And then I just typed in captions. That works really well for me, especially if you have a team of people. It's easy to share that document and have them add notes or edit or things like that. So Amelia says, talking about upcoming craft shows that I will be at and how do I make people want to show up? So you can talk about something, you know, you've been at the bench and you've been working on new pieces or your new designs that you'll be sharing. I think it's great to lean into, I'm so excited to reconnect with you after not seeing you for a long time. I would go on and show your face and do a video or story saying, I'm so excited to see you at this craft show coming up. Stop by. I'd love to catch up. I would lean into that aspect of it. And then also like always leaning on like, I have new product that I haven't shown the internet yet that you'll get to see. I think that's a great way to encourage people to come to your booth. And then, you know, when we're talking about email lists, there's so much I could go into with all of this, but have an email segment, target it to that specific location of people, maybe offer a special discount or promotion or free gift with purchase or something like that. That could encourage people to show up. There's a lot of routes you can take, but I love like at this point, like you're so excited to see your clients. You're so excited to see people in person again, to have them try on the jewelry, to see the stuff you've been working on this past year. More of a technical question, but do you absolutely need a repost app to reshare somebody's post? No, you can just screenshot it and then go from there. Always credit people, of course, but you don't need a repost app. So hashtags, great question. Talk about this forever. I'm not a fan of hashtags. I actually don't use hashtags. What you want to rely on is having an engaged audience, and that's what's really going to boost your reach. But I do recommend hashtagging your brand name. Yes, Laura, do a hashtag with your brand name. I think that's great because what hashtags are is they're a search function. So they're a good way for people to search for your brand. And then you can use more niche hashtags that have purpose, but using hashtags to grow your following passively doesn't work anymore, in my opinion. I think you get a lot of spam followers that way, and you waste a lot. At least I tend to waste a lot of time trying to find hashtags that are good, when really you should be spending that time working on your captions or taking photos or your content or working on other things. I'm not a huge fan of hashtags. Okay, any other questions? And also a lot of these questions everyone's asking here, I have full hour-long videos about them in the Stay Gold Collective that if you sign up, you'd be able to watch today. So feel free to message me for more information about that, or visit this link to sign up. I'm going to put it in the chat again. Any other questions from anyone? Thank you so much for being here for my first chat about content planning. I know it's a lot of information, and maybe you still feel confused about where to go or what to do, but it's a big topic and it's a lot of work. And I hope this helped give you some guidance and some idea of where to start. I'd love to hear if everybody's up for staying for a minute longer. Let me know what your biggest takeaway was from this, or what you learned that you didn't know, or anything like that. I would love to hear. Just help me. It would help me know what to lean in on for my next webinar. And also let me know, you know, I'd love to connect with you if we're not following each other on Instagram, or we haven't chatted via DM on Instagram, shoot me a DM. I'd love to get to know you, to chat, to be in touch, to follow you. Biggest takeaway, seeing your grid. Cool. Yeah, a little behind the scenes there. And also, you know, if you go and follow me on Instagram and you're like, okay, well, she's not following the plan exactly. Do as I say, not as I do. It was helpful to see your content. I thought that might be helpful. I'm really excited that I shared that because it's so much easier to see it visually. To show up consistently, feel empowered about the timeframes of posting on the various platforms. Feels manageable, good. Repetition, good. Yes, don't feel like you're bothering people. Content planning still feels overwhelming. What you presented is great, and I'm really excited to give it a shot. Good, good, good. Love it, love it, love it, love it. The monthly plan with themes and monthly newsletters feels like good, 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 good. Biggest takeaways, really being purposeful. Yes, very good. Not creating content to create content. We're doing with a goal, aligning content. Repetition is good. I'm going to keep saying that. If you ever need, truly, if you ever need a reminder, just shoot me a DM. I'm glad to I love motivating people. It's one of my favorite things. Oh my gosh, you guys are so great. I'm so excited to go back and read this chat later because it's coming so quickly. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being engaged and being here and commenting and chatting with me. I love it. Again, I love community. Please feel free to reach out with questions about anything. Again, I'd love to invite you to join the Stay Gold Collective. If you're looking for just one-off, one-on-one feedback, I offer consulting calls. So feel free to ask me about that. Or if you go to the link in my bio on Instagram, there's an easy link to go and schedule something like that. And if you sign up for the Stay Gold Collective, because you saw me in this webinar, it doesn't have to be today, it can be next week or next month. Just let me know you signed up because you saw me here. I will give you also a free 30-minute consulting call. So thank you so much. Thanks for being here. It was good to chat with everyone, and shoot me a DM. And I'm really excited to see what you guys do with this information. So let me know. Let me know if you try anything out and it works for you, all of those things. Anyway, thanks again for being here. I will talk to everyone soon.